Hey, Melissa. Hi, guys. Just be a second. I'm actually bringing someone on the video with me. Let's see if I know how to do it. Hi, guys. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay, I have Shelly here. Shelly, are you on? Hi, Diet. Hi, Shelly.
You did it.
Can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up or something. I just want to make sure.
I can hear you
Awesome.
just fine.
Okay, cool. So I am going to be pedaling from San Francisco to Boston for 3,800 miles plus to raise awareness and promote life, and also talk about a little bit about suicide and depression. How has it impacted all of us? So I have Shelly here, and she's going to kind of help me with this because it's been a little bit challenging for me kind of answering some of the questions that people have. Why am I doing this? So, Shelly, I'll let you kind of help me out here.
Yeah, I became aware of you, I think on Facebook. We haven't met in real life, but we've had some conversations, and it dawned on me that some people probably don't even know how this even started or what the Ride for Life is. Can you just kind of give us a feel? What is the Ride for Life? So when I share this and the people that I know are looking at this, what is the Ride for Life and why are you doing it?
Sure. So, just to start off, I think the inception or the genesis of this whole thing about Right for Life is I realized at a time in my life when I was struggling, and I realized I was having a hard time coping with myself, and I needed some hope when the walls were crumbling on me, when I was suffocating, and I needed a different path, something that will change the trajectory of my life. And so I realized I needed to make a decision that I would never do something that I would never do in my entire life. And so this really started off as a personal story
And
for me.
when did this take place? Was this recent or are we going
Yeah,
back?
so this whole thing started back in May, really, this decision. So my first ride was from Denver, Colorado to Chicago. Took place on June 6th or June 9th, and I got to Chicago about mid-July. And this whole decision started on Memorial Day weekend. And I picked up a bike a week after, and a week after that, I was on Amtrak from Sacramento to Denver, and then the following Friday I was on the bicycle pedaling my butt from Denver, Colorado to Fort Morgan, Colorado, and on to Chicago.
Okay.
And
What was the purpose
and
of that?
the purpose and the purpose of that, and I think what you're asking is what triggered this whole thing.
Yeah, why did you do it?
And yeah, and what happened at that time was because between April and May, my life was, honestly, it was falling apart. And I was in a relationship with this wonderful person that I was going to marry. During that relationship, a lot of my insecurities came back out, which I thought I'd deal with.
Hmm.
Apparently not. It really caused a lot of damage to a relationship, and there could be other things. And quite honestly, I probably did not grasp all of it. And also, in addition to that, my business that I was building for, it wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And around the time frame of April and close to May, I was actually in the process of letting go of all our employees because we were leading by expense, not by revenue. We couldn't
Okay.
keep up. So in May, really what it all trickled up, and right before I flew out from Sacramento to Omaha, that's where that uh, person lives. I was going to visit her. I was planning on staying there for a week. I came back 4 days earlier, and we don't talk anymore. And prior to me flying out of Sacramento, actually, that same day, that Friday, my business partner and I, we let everybody go on our team
Okay.
because
So
again,
your
we couldn't
personal life
afford.
and your professional life were basically
Exactly.
on the decline.
It was all falling apart. I was feeling responsible. So all these team members in the business, we've only had them for 2 months, and I personally really feel guilty and responsible that we can no longer
So
offering
as
that opportunity.
so as a result of those events, did you yourself become suicidal?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Gratefully, I was not suicidal, but I knew I had a lot of problem. Meaning, during that relationship, I was actually questioning all the major decisions I've made in my entire life. I was questioning when I joined the military, when I came over from Taiwan in my junior year. I was questioning when I walk away, when I leave a job, knowing I had a mortgage and I was going through depression. I was questioning walking away from a mortgage that house got foreclosed on. I was questioning skipping town, living in the car with two of my dogs, and I was questioning I surrendering them to the shelter, and I was questioning when I started the business for real estate. I was questioning building the team. I was questioning having the relationship with that person. I'm not going to name her name. Basically, I was questioning everything, all the major decisions I've made in my entire life. And I was actually questioning my entire decision making process. So I was very stuck. I was in a very bad place at that time. And I realized that I needed some change because obviously 36 years it hasn't served me. It was not good enough. And I realized that I needed more change than I know what they are. I know I need more than just little change in business. I know I need a little more than little change in personal relationship, but I don't know what they are. I really don't. I don't have it all figured out back in May. And so I realized at that time around Memorial Day weekend that I needed to do something that I would never ever imagine that I would do in my entire life. Sorry, Shelly. Say that one more time for me, please. Sorry, Shelly. Can you say that one more time for me, please? Sorry, there is a little lag.
I guess my question to you is what
Oh,
made you pick up a bike and how did that experience evolve into what you're now doing is the Ride for Life to bring awareness and to
sure.
educate people about suicide?
Actually, let me see. Give me 1 second. The volume is not super high, and I'm struggling hearing you. So I'm gonna see if I can wear a.
Earpiece.
Sorry, guys. I don't do this often, so I'm gonna try to figure out a solution. Because if I can't hear you, I can't answer your question. That's gonna be kind of funny.
Okay. All right, we've got some people who are joining us, and while Denny's getting his earpiece, I just want to let you know that the reason we're doing this live is to bring awareness to the Ride for Life that Denny's going to be doing starting August 25th. He's going to be bicycling from San Francisco to Boston, if you can imagine. And the whole purpose of this Ride for Life is to bring awareness for suicide and, the stigma and the shame and the misinformation that's out there. And I really wanted you to get a sense of why he's doing this and that it evolved out of his own personal experience. Can you hear me yet, Denny?
I'm working on it. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I apologize, and thank you for
All right,
doing the
cool.
recap. for everybody. I think that's really helpful for all the people that just hopped on.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get my thingy squared away.
And the reason that Denny and I connected is for some people, you realize that I have a husband who took his life in 2005. So 13 years ago, that trauma, affected my life. And it's not, it's a grief, it's a complicated grief process. It's nothing you ever want to go through. And I have a problem, Denny and I have had this conversation where um, I have a problem with the whole term suicide prevention, but I am fully behind the whole idea of suicide awareness and educating people about what suicide is, what it isn't. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what suicide is. People say it's selfish or whatever, but as part of his ride, then he's going to be educating us on his own experience. He actually was touched recently by someone close to him who took her own life. This is a very serious topic and it affects so many of us. I think the last statistic I heard, and I don't know if this is accurate, but the Foundation for Suicide Prevention had come out with, I think, 30,000 families a year are impacted by suicide. Now, that's not 30,000 people. There are 30,000 people who commit suicide, but think about how many people are in a family and how many people are affected by this trauma that really affects a whole family. So, Denny, we were talking about your own experience and how that evolved. Forgive me if you've got some background noise. That evolved into Ride for Life. And you're going to be traveling from San Francisco to Boston starting August 25th. That's correct?
That's correct, and I apologize, Ken. I have a little bit of technical difficulties. We're just gonna do the best we can. How about that? Okay,
We're
and then
not
maybe
perfect. We're
work
not
on.
professional. We're just trying to bring awareness to the Ride for Life for you.
And I'll be quite honest with you. During my relationship that was falling apart, what I realized is I really learned to accept myself. I really learned to forgive myself and love myself. And I gave myself the permission to make mistakes. I gave myself the permission not to be perfect. I gave myself the permission not to have everything figured out. And really, this is the first time I allow myself the time to grow. Because I think the society has pushing us in a way that we're so used to having that instant gratification. I want something, I want change, and Danny, why is it taking so freaking long? And I realize unfortunately, things does not work that way. It does not work that way.
You know what I also want to talk about here when you're talking about societal values, we're so used to people being perfectionistic, and we live in a society where social media, everything's got to be perfect, and it's an image, it's not a reality, and who we are on Facebook isn't always who we are in real life, and people are struggling. And as long as this stigma and shame is attached to mental health issues, people are going to suffer in silence. If we can create an environment where there's safety and people can come forward and let us know that they're struggling, then we can talk about what the resources are. Are you able to hear me?
I'm struggling a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but I hear what you're saying, right? It's this whole stigma is really, has it been serving us?
No.
Right? And I think that's fair for us to question. And I really realized that I needed to break that because I'm 36 years old and I have been putting a lot of pressure and stress on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't served me. And I am where I am today for a very good reason. And quite honestly, it's not good enough for me. It's not.
Well, we also talked about
right? And
Brené's.
absolutely. And absolutely. Absolutely. And there is a huge difference. And I look back in my years, and I realized for 35 years, last year was the first year I ever celebrated my birthday. And that was 35 years later. I didn't have a reason. And all the birthday parties, they don't count. They really don't count until I actually truly celebrate life, actually celebrate birthday. None of that counts. And last year was the first year I ever celebrated. And this year, really, up until 2 months ago, I have really, really, really struggled to accept myself for who I am. And I have made mistakes, and I have to take full ownership of all of it, right? All the consequences, they don't just go away. And at the end of the day, I have to I have to learn to accept myself. What's that? What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you, Shelly. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Okay, got it. And this I guess reception is not the greatest. So we'll work on that for our next video. The truth is, so how did this evolve into this whole thing? When I was writing from Denver to Chicago, I was actually writing to raise awareness for veteran suicide prevention. And as I write and talk to people, I realize suicide is everywhere, and depression is everywhere. People struggling life with was everywhere. For me, oh, thank you for the question. What is your message to those who struggle with suicidal ideas? So, quite honestly, since I started this 2 months ago, talking about ending suicide, talking about ending depression, quite honestly, talking about depression and suicide all day is very extremely depressing. It's very extremely depressing, and quite honestly, I have no interest in that at all. Because the more we focus on certain things, the more we think about it, and the more we focus on that. And I don't want our life to be so gloomy, always be about depression and suicide. In fact, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. Yes, since this past week, as I liquidate Sacramento, is I realize perhaps the better angle to tackle this really is talk about life, right? To talk about hope and promote life, right? Because 2 months ago, I would never imagine that I would ride a bicycle, pedal 1,300 miles, cross Nebraska, Iowa, into Illinois. I would never imagine that. And if you ask anybody who is in my life, they would never use the word endurance for Denny. And I don't even know Denny has a side of endurance. I didn't know that. And yet here we are, while my butt still hates me for sitting on that saddle all day, every day, for tens and hundreds of miles, for that 1,300 miles. I cannot stop doing what I'm doing right now, meaning to raise awareness, because 2 days ago I lost a friend.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
When people ask me, hey, what triggered this whole ride? Did you ever lose anybody? And gratefully, I have never lost anybody until in my life until 2 days ago. And what really went through my system was more than just sad. I was actually really frustrated. I was really frustrated for the fact that I knew her and I knew she was full of love. And I knew that she has the possibility of living this amazing life. And would you agree that all of us deserve a beautiful life?
Absolutely.
would you agree that all of us deserve an amazing life?
Absolutely.
And would you agree that we all deserve an epic life, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, unfortunately, she will never get to experience that.
Right.
And it frustrates me because, again, we're talking about this after the fact. And it really frustrates me because it's so counterintuitive.
Can you hear me?
And I can hear you okay.
Because one of the things that we talked about was we need to honor the decision of the person who has taken their lives. That we all have
Absolutely.
choices. It may be an irrational choice, but it doesn't define their life either. That their final act does
Absolutely.
not negate every good thing that they've ever done in their life.
Absolutely. And quite honestly, a lot of time for people to go through what they went through to make the decision that they made, we honestly don't know what they went through.
Right.
We don't know how bad it was for them to make a decision like that because nobody will ever make that decision lightly. And so I still love her as much as the first day that I met her,
Right.
meaning, and she and I, we actually met in animal shelter. That's when I gave up two of my dogs. She was the one on the other side of the counter who helped me, and she saw the worst part of my life. And she was there as I went through recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I will always remember her.
Good.
And it frustrates me not because of the choice she made, but it frustrates me that I think we deserve better. And I think we can do better as a society.
Are you
Again,
frustrated with the idea that you were unable to assist her, to help her, to coach her through that time in her life?
and quite honestly, we cannot force people to live.
Right.
I know that for a fact. And again, I respect her choice. But what frustrates me is the situation. It's not about her. I adore her, and we kind of grew apart a little bit because whatever reason, right? But what my frustration is not with her is about the situation, about the situation our society is. A lot of time, we're talking about it so late, after we have lost a person. For example, Kate Spade. For example, Anthony Bourdain. After we lost Robin Williams, right? It's so counterintuitive that that frustrates me, and that is the reason why that I have decided that we as a society we need to do better and we deserve better, and I know we can do better, and that's part of the reason
What
why.
do you think needs to change? What do you think would have created an environment of safety where maybe she could have come forward and let somebody know that she was struggling?
Sure, and I think it's more complex, and I don't want to oversimplify it because it's really not that simple, right? But I mean, there's a lot of factors that we're talking about. One is, like you said, safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
And also the other thing is about our self-image, loving ourselves a little bit more, taking better care of ourselves,
Right.
right? And also just having the conversation because a lot of time when we are talking about these things, it's already too late, right? So going back to what I was talking about in terms of, um, sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry. Okay, so I was talking about safe environment. Unfortunately, well, I should say this. There are still a lot of loving people out there that are willing to listen. However, I think also there is a good part of the society that we don't have the patience for it. We don't have the patience for it, right? Or we sometimes jump to the conclusion or we say things out of love, out of support. We don't know what's the better things to say, and we say things that doesn't help. For example, oh, it's gonna get better. But the truth is, whatever they're experiencing at that moment is true to them. That pain is true to them, right? And also, in regards to safe environment, a lot of time until we fully resolved of whatever we have going on, it's really hard to talk about it, and it really takes a person to be vulnerable, to open up that platform for other people to feel safe.
Right.
Because a lot of time, when we're talking about these things, people don't want to share because what happens when they share? People start saying things, and it's really not helping. And I know people don't always do it out of ill intention,
Hmm.
but it happens.
Right.
And I think we as a
And that's
society,
part
we
of,
can
I
do
think,
better.
what the Ride for Life is, that you're trying to bring awareness. What can we do to help somebody who's struggling? What can we say? How can we, as a community, as a society, um, you know, I mean, I'll tell you, my husband went to a counselor on January 12th and said, my wife thinks I'm depressed, but I don't think I am. And on February 1st, he took his life. So it's frustrating for family members to try to help sometimes because you're dealing with somebody who is not thinking rationally. And that was the one, you know, I had a lot of questions after Jim passed away, and all of my questions were answered. And then the last question was, you know, what motivates somebody at the end of their lives to actually take their life? And I think the only answer that I've come up with is that sometimes we have questions and there is no answer because it's it's an irrational decision. They're not thinking clearly, that there's been a series of events, sometimes, not always. Not everybody's suicide is for the same reason. But the more we talk about it, we have veterans that are coming back from wars that have seen unimaginable things, that are struggling with suicide and are taking their lives. And if we create an environment where people can talk about it and not feel like everything's going to be so perfect all the time and live behind an image and a facade, and actually share how they feel and what they're thinking, maybe we can help people who are struggling with the idea of taking their lives to maybe realize that hopefully it's temporary. Hopefully we can get some resources to them and just support them through that.
Absolutely. And I think part of it too is, by the way, thank you for being patient. And this is kind of me processing this whole thing.
We both are.
Yeah. And quite honestly, this whole message, right? What am I trying to accomplish here?
Right.
Right? The 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 goal, the mission here really is that we can start talking about in terms of how there is a hope, right? And quite honestly, just like 2 months ago, if you ask me what does the outlook look like in the future when things were falling apart, I quite honestly do not know how to answer that question. I really don't.
That's a dark
But the
time.
truth is, what's that?
It's a dark time.
Absolutely, it was a dark
Can't
time,
see
and quite
past.
honestly, I was in a I was not in a very good mental space at the moment, right? And what I'm really grateful was that I made a decision to do something that I would never experience. I don't know how that was going to turn out. And yet here we are 2 months later looking back, and I'm really grateful that I took on that ride because I knew had I not taken on that ride, I would always regret it one day looking back. And yet here we are, even though my butt do not agree with me, do not like me sitting on saddle all day, pedaling all those miles, I cannot not do this because this is so relevant and this is so important. And quite honestly, why is it so important to me? Because what I realized was the pain that I experienced in my own experience when things were falling apart, it was falling apart so fast that I have no grasp of anything at that moment. And while I was not going to kill myself, but the truth is, it was so painful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful that I really got distracted. I was very, very distracted by. Sorry, okay, I'm back. So my butt was hurting so badly that I was so distracted from all the negative thoughts. And perhaps, I'm just curious, sometimes maybe we just need to be distracted.
Yeah.
And I don't want to oversimplify it, right? It's a little bit more complex than that, but sometimes we just need to get distracted from whatever problem we have, right? And perhaps we look for a better alternative.
Well, I think
Possibly.
too the fact that you chose some physical activity I think that that's a component of it.
Absolutely, because I think we all can agree, and I'm not very scientific, so people can help me out there. But the truth is, a lot of physical activities, they do create endorphin, and also what's the other chemical that was produced for the brain?
Serotonin.
Serotonin, perfect, right? And so I think all of that helps, right? While cycling is not going to end all problems, while cycling is not going to end depression or suicide, cycling is one of the better way to create that chemical that we need for our brain
Mm-hmm.
and help us make better decisions, because at the end of the day, it is about making better decisions,
I
one small one at a time.
I think it's interesting that you chose cycling, and when we talk about mental health issues, we talk about cycling. So there's a correlation there.
Tell me more, Shelley.
Well, if you think about the whole process of decompensation, when people are losing their grasp of rational thinking, that it can end in suicide. And if we as a family, as a society, can reach out, I mean, we reached out, believe me, I reached out plenty, but people didn't know what to do, they didn't know what to say, they didn't know how to be there for us. And so it became just like, all right, well, I made the phone call, now what do you want me to do? And sometimes it's just listening. One of the things that struck me when my husband passed away is um, I found a writing in his wallet, and it was about how God is silent. I can't remember it all, but I'm a fixer, and I'm sure, I know me. Whenever he brought up a problem, I'm sure that I tried to find some sort of um, remedy for the things that were going on. When really, I think what that message in his wallet was is that sometimes people just need to be heard. You know.
Absolutely, right? And sometimes they just need a safe environment to let it out and know
Yeah.
that they were not alone.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that's part of the reason why on this journey that I'm pursuing, not only that I rode 1,300 miles from Denver to Chicago, now that I'm going to pedaling another 3,800 miles from San Francisco to Boston. In fact, this is so relevant and close to my heart. I literally cannot do anything, and I liquidate everything in Sacramento, and I'm going to start a cycling team. And the purpose of this team, the mission really is to inspire people, because I know a lot of times when people struggle in life, we feel like the world is ending. And it's totally fair, because that's how painful it is.
And you feel alone.
Uh,
You feel alone in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We feel very alone. And in fact, we purposely isolate ourselves because we don't feel safe. We don't know if we can talk to people, if we don't know if we talk to people, if they're going to judge us or not. Right?
Well,
So we purposely
that
hide it.
the other thing that I learned too is that a lot of people commit suicide because they think they, not they're doing you a favor, but kind of, that they
Yeah,
don't
one more
have
time.
any, that they are
Say that one
doing
more.
you a favor. That
Yes,
sometimes it has just been such a downward spiral that they feel like the people that they love are better off without them.
absolutely. Right? And they feel like they are a burden to other people's life. They feel like they are, how would I say this? We feel, I'm gonna use we because I feel the same way, right? I feel like I don't matter. In fact, I feel like the world is probably a better place without me, right? I feel like
But
maybe if I was not
lies.
here,
Those are the lies that depression
tr-
will tell us.
absolutely, right? It is not true. The truth is, there are people who really care.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, quite honestly, we all deserve an amazing life. We all deserve a beautiful life, and we all could. It doesn't make life easier now that we're talking about it. It doesn't make it easier, right? But the truth is that we all have that possibility. But until we give it a try, until we give our life a chance, until we give ourselves a chance, we will never find out. Just like I would never know if I can pedal my ass 1,300 miles from Denver to Chicago until I tried it,
Right.
right? And I would never know if I will be able to pedal my ass from San Francisco to Boston until I try it. I don't know. I might not be able to, but
You
guess
will.
what? At the, and thank you. And at
You
the end
will.
of the day, it doesn't matter, right? When we are all in, when we are doing what we are needed to do, the end result stop mattering. I don't care if I make it to Boston or not. I really don't care at this point, right? It's the fact that we give ourselves a chance and we get to experience ourselves. We get to experience our life, and that to me, I think it's more important,
I have
right?
a
Is it going to
question
be?
for you.
Yes.
Where are you going to stay along the route? Like what are your plans for accommodations and how many hours a day do you plan on cycling?
Thank you for asking. So, I will be quite honest with you. I do not have it all planned out. When I was riding from Denver to Chicago, I'm really grateful that I have a lot of hosting families hosting me in different cities. So I get to stay with them. That way I have a safe place to stay at night.
Hmm.
And I was able to wake up in the morning, get a good night rest, and pedal again. And when I was riding from Denver to Chicago, I was pedaling, I want to say, maybe 50 to 65 miles on average, and I was ranging from 20 some miles to 100 miles a day. So it was long hours. There are days that I pedaled more than 12 hours. I remember my first day pedaling from Denver, Colorado to Fort Morgan, Colorado. Man, ignorance is a bliss. On Google Map, it says 95 miles, and I didn't know what it means by pedaling 95 miles. And I left Denver around 6 or 7. I did not get to Fort Morgan, Colorado until close to 9 o'clock. I was so beat up, and I we ate so much dirt. And Google gave us some third row, and I will have to say I have to give Google Map a lot of credit. It took me all the way to Chicago, but there are portions. Oh my
Well,
goodness,
it's not flat the whole way. You're going up inclines and declines and
it was
it's not
crazy. It
easy
was
terrain.
dirt.
Yeah.
It was dirt, and my tires cannot handle dirt. And I was thinking to myself, what in the world was I thinking?
Denny, do you need anybody to help you financially to fund this ride for life?
So right now I am writing solo, and this is privately funded, and I have not been generating revenue for the past 2 months since I started writing from Denver to Chicago, and I
So
could
if
use the
people
help.
are
And
interested, are you able to accept donations or contributions to help you to fund
I
this
do have,
ride?
thank you, I do have GoFundMe. At this point, I'm not 501c3 status, so it's not tax deductible.
Right, but
However, I think that is, yeah, so thank you. I could accept donation, but again, it's not tax deductible. However, I think this is a conversation that we're having right now is what's next? What's after writing to Boston, right? What is the plan, really? So I'm glad that we're having this conversation because the next step really is starting a cycling team, and this cycling team is going to be eventually we are going to race and we're going to tour, and all the writers, and right now I am the only writer, I'm the first writer, I'm the alpha writer, and eventually all of the writers are going to be people who has combated and survived depression and suicide, and that the statement that we're going to make is really we're here to inspire people because a lot of time we feel like the world is crumbling on us.
that's right.
Ending it today is the only way to go.
So you've
While that
become,
might feel that way,
you're putting yourself in a position where you can be a role model to somebody to give them hope and say, well, if these guys can do it, I can do it. If they could
we
get
have
past
to.
that, I can get past this.
Absolutely. And we have to, right? Because when we talk about role modeling, when we talk about hope, we cannot wait for other people. At the end of the day, I don't know if there is a pro cycling team out there. And quite honestly, I think our society deserves better. We deserve better, and we can do better, right? And if I have to be the first rider, I will be that first rider. And at the end of the day, not only we're going to compete, we are going to not we're not just going to survive suicide and depression. We're not going to do that. We're going to we're gonna do the best we can. We're going to thrive and we're gonna shine, because that is the goal. Because if we're only doing mediocre, it's not inspiring, right? I don't wake up in the morning with a depression and say, you know what, today I look up to be mediocre. That's not good enough. That is really not good enough. And I think we really can do better. Now, can I do better or not? That's a good question. And I'm going to do the best I can, right? And one step at a time, like I mentioned, I don't have it all figured out. I can use a lot of help along the way. And
So
I know,
tell us do you have the itinerary of the different states that you're going to be going through so that maybe people who are watching can maybe give you a shout out, let you know that you can stay with them along the way if you need to, if you're going to be passing through their area? Would it be
thank
helpful to
you.
put a map out maybe and let people know the areas that you'll be cycling through?
Absolutely, I will definitely do that. I'll post the itinerary and also the links to Google Maps so people can see it.
And
And
the Facebook page is hashtag Team Ride for Life.
that's correct. And so I'll include the link in the thread as well. So it's the group is hashtag Team Right for Life. And right now, because this started off as a personal story, so quite honestly, the story has been shared on my personal profile and page. So it's just Danny Ying stories. But as we transition, we're going to move towards the team because that's going to really help people be able to
Thanks,
see.
Valerie.
And quite honestly, thank you, Valerie. And quite honestly, as we progress, we are going to see a lot of needs. And if I may take a moment, do people want to know what's the ultimate vision of this ride from San Francisco to Boston?
Why
Are
not?
people
Go for
curious?
it. Go for it.
Okay,
Tell us.
all right. So the ultimate vision of this ride really is we're talking about raising awareness. So at the end of the day, if
Raising awareness for people who just joined us. Raising awareness for what?
perfect. So the whole purpose is to promote life and also raising awareness for suicide and depression and how real they are and how they impact people's life, right? So that is the purpose of this whole ride. It's not so that Danny can be fit and get to Boston. That's not the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And so to raise the awareness, quite honestly, we are going to need media coverage because quite honestly, word of mouth is probably one of the best way. And individual conversation is great, but at the end of the day, there's not enough hours in a day for me to talk to people on a daily basis, right? And so what we have found is that perhaps if the medias are able to cover us along the way, right? Why is this crazy person riding on I-80? Like,
Well,
what is he doing?
what about doing Facebook Live um, conversations as you go about your race?
It's a possibility, but I will be very honest with you. While I have a service that is not very good, so I did not have a whole lot of coverage in Nebraska. I did not have a whole lot of coverage in Iowa. So, quite honestly, while it's nice, but I don't know if it's feasible. And I'm trying to see if I can somehow get Verizon. But I know Verizon and we had a fallout, and that was my fault 6 years ago when I had financial difficulties,
Okay.
and I
Well,
didn't pay them.
another suggestion might be do you have a YouTube channel?
I do have a YouTube
So if
channel.
you
I'll put the links here.
so if you do videos and then upload them to YouTube when you do have coverage, or email them to somebody and they can upload them for you, well, then you'd still need Wi-Fi. But I mean, you're going to have coverage along the way. It's just going to be spotty, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a
You
little bit
get a lot of
challenging.
coverage on Facebook. Facebook's a really powerful medium, I think, and Instagram.
Absolutely. And we'll do the best we can to cover as much as we can. And quite honestly, I appreciate everybody's support and encouragement on Facebook. And I know that Facebook and Instagram is going to be a great way of pushing things out. And we'll definitely utilizing those as well. But quite honestly, I actually talked to a lady who I met over at Volca, Iowa, a little town, and I was actually taking a break there, standing in front of American Legion Memorial, and a truck pulled up. Here comes Donna Day. She came up to me. She said, "Hey, son, what are you doing here? Where are you coming from? Where are you going? And
Mm.
so I say, ma'am, I'm writing for Veteran Suicide Prevention, writing from Denver, Colorado to Chicago, Illinois. And we talked. Next thing you know, she called, and the news reporter came out, and they did a story on the right.
Awesome.
And
So
I
that's
think a
something
lot
that
of it,
we can help you with, is maybe connect locally with some sort of media that is willing to
possibly,
publicize the ride, and also to share your videos. You know, if we share your videos
absolutely,
on Facebook, that's going to eventually make the rounds. And the more people who share it,
absolutely.
obviously, the more awareness we bring to the Ride for Life.
And hopefully that we can encourage our community to start having engaging these conversations, right? And the goal is, first of all, I'm gonna be honest. We talked about self-image, and one thing I really feel that is super important is this is a lesson that it took me 36 years to learn, that I just barely learned it 2 months ago, is really to accept myself and really to learn to love myself. And quite honestly, a lot of time people will be people, and conditioning and reprogramming takes time. And the problem is that people will say things. At the end of the day, if it's okay for me not to filter here, I don't know if Facebook is going to block me or not, but I'm just going to say it.
I don't think so.
I don't know, but we need to stop giving a fuck about what people say, right? Meaning, if it really doesn't serve us, right? Sometimes we just need to block it off of our head, right? And it's easy for me to say, perhaps, but I say it out of love, and I say it for myself that it really took me 36 years to learn to love myself.
Do you think that you have found that in some self acceptance, what other people say really doesn't matter anymore? Does it hurt less when people say things that maybe are unkind?
And that is, you said a perfect word there, is perhaps we need to learn to be kinder to ourselves, right? We uh, everybody is different, and I can only speak for myself. So when I say this, it's not across the board, right? Some of us put a lot of pressure and stress on ourselves.
Right.
And that was something that I really have to ask myself, has it served me? And quite honestly, the answer is not. No, it has not served me. My life is broken and I'm living in pain and I freaking hate myself, right? And so it hasn't served me. And so what I really learned is, guess what? I can never divorce myself. I'm the only person I cannot divorce. And if I cannot learn to love myself, my life is going to be very miserable. Guess what? Maybe one day I will kill myself, right? And those are real. And it really takes a lot for me to be reminded that I am good enough and I am loved. And quite honestly, I don't need to live in what other people's opinions are about me. Not to say that I'm so arrogant that I don't give a shit about other people,
Right.
but the truth is,
You have to live with you.
sometimes I have to live with me, and sometimes people, what we hear from other people might not even be what they mean, right? And so we start having all these
It's a
little
lot of
voices in our
protection,
own
isn't
head.
it? Especially these
Exactly,
days on social
and
media. It's really not about
what
us,
does that
it's
really
about
mean
them.
to us, right? And so this is really me learning to realize, you know what, Denny, if I'm doing the best I can, maybe that is good enough. And
That
if I don't feel
not
like I'm
maybe.
doing
There's no
enough,
maybe. There's no maybe.
right, exactly, that is good enough. And if I feel like I can do more, just do more, right? It's similar to having a volcano, putting all that pressure, putting all that stress, and sweep everything underneath the rug and pretending everything is okay while it's not. How does that really help? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that volcano will erupt. That's
I've
just the
I've
truth.
often said about Jim's suicide that it was the perfect storm, that it was just this downward spiral, and on that particular day, there were so many different factors that contributed to the decision that he made, that it was just this perfect storm. It was awful. It was awful.
It is. And the
Thanks,
truth
Valerie.
is, thank you, Val. And the truth is, all that pressure I put on myself, is it even helpful? And the answer is no, it's not. In fact, I tend to do better. And I notice maybe I am doing better now without all that stress. So maybe I ought to change the way that I think. maybe I ought to reprogram myself, and maybe I ought to be open about changes in my life
Hmm.
if I want to experience something better. What if someone else is right and I'm wrong? Meaning, what if they say procrastinate your pressure, right? What if they're right and I'm wrong? Versus me stuck in my head, oh, I need to push myself harder. Yeah, I'm definitely not promoting people being mediocre, but when it comes to life and death, does any of that pressure really help?
And that's where a sense of community, I think, really is very valuable, because sometimes hearing somebody else's perspective when they're being supportive of us can really get us outside of our head. You know, in real estate, we talk about the drunken monkey. We talk about the thoughts that we have in our head that prevent us from being as successful as we can be, or doing the things that we need to do to be successful. And when we have a community around us when we're struggling, there sometimes we our hope is derived from their hope and their belief in us, that we place our faith in ourselves based on their faith in us. Does that make sense? You kind of
Yeah,
have to,
it's
you borrow the belief that somebody else has in you to move forward and to do better and be better.
and to encourage each
Right,
other, right? To be that shoulder for other people.
right.
Because sometimes when we're going through hard time, we really can use that support. And quite honestly, riding 1,300 miles, I couldn't have done it alone. Because there are many days I ask, what the fuck are you thinking, Danny?
Right.
Like, why would you want to do this? You don't even enjoy sweating. I don't enjoy sweating.
But you did it.
And I'm grateful because of people's encouragement, because I remember why I'm writing, because I know I'm fighting for me when I was struggling in my life.
That's
I'm
right.
fighting for those people who are struggling in their life. I'm fighting for those people who come back from overseas with PTSD. I'm fighting for first responders. I'm fighting for people with DV. I'm fighting for people who has sexual abuse. I'm fighting for everybody and anybody who is struggling. And I remember that. And quite honestly, that is my fuel. That has kept me going because, man, people ask me, how long have you been training for this? I said, what are you talking about? I just picked up the bike and go. I kind of have to get in shape really fast on the road, or I just
I think
struggle.
you hit on some things too that we've learned from our mentor, Tony Robbins, and that's that a change in mindset is a decision away. And that for people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideologies, that sometimes just that 2 millimeter shift in perspective is all you need to move forward and move past wherever it is that you're stuck. And that's something that when you're depressed, you don't know that there is another option. And people who have committed suicide and live to tell the story, they really didn't want to die. They just didn't want to be in pain anymore. They just didn't want to be in pain. And we live in a society where we're so isolated. We don't know what our neighbors are going through. We don't know what our own family members sometimes are going through. So opening up this dialogue that the Ride for Life can do gives people a platform maybe to start talking about suicide in a way that maybe encourages a little more self-disclosure, a little bit more vulnerability, a little bit more authenticity. And you know, when you're struggling and you're feeling alone and you're depressed and you just don't see a way out, sometimes just talking it over with somebody who's going to be supportive might be what it takes. I'm not saying that's true in all cases, but maybe, maybe. Doesn't It's not going to hurt.
Absolutely,
It's not going to hurt.
absolutely, absolutely, right? And at the end of the day, just like what you're saying, that we ought to create that environment, safe environment, to welcome and invite these conversations. And quite honestly, they're life and death. That's how serious this is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And safe environment is not easy to create. It really is not easy to create because it really takes someone to be vulnerable first to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, if needs be, right, I will be the first one to share anything and everything about my life, about my struggle, because I've learned that there is nothing to be ashamed of. It's just part of me, part of what makes me who I am.
Hmm.
and I have already accepted myself.
You know, the thing that
Now,
that impresses me about you too, and this is something that I live my life by, this principle that we don't go through what we go through simply to help ourselves. That whatever we go through to help other people along the way as well. And that's what I commend you for, that you could have just come out of this dark time of your own and just said, okay, well, I'm feeling better now and I'm going to move on with my life. But you didn't. You feel that sense of responsibility to go back and help other people who are struggling know that there are some options and resources for them.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't know, I feel maybe I have this hero complex. I don't know if it's the right way of putting
It's
it.
coming from a good place though, so it's okay.
It is. And I really, I, my mother and I, we really struggle with our relationship. And I never really did a good job on explaining to her of who I am. She never understood me for 36 years until last week.
But I think, and we had this conversation before, part of that was that you hadn't figured it out yet. So how could you articulate it to her?
Right, absolutely. And it was really challenging because I have not accepted myself, right? And so it was really challenging for her as well. And quite honestly, I finally had an opportunity to try to explain to her of who I am
Mm-hmm.
in my broken Chinese, in my broken Mandarin. She finally realized that my struggle is that I am just different. And I share with her the reason why I'm so different, not because I cannot be doing something that I cannot fit in the box that is normal. I need a purpose to live. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying, but I am really afraid of living going through motions. I'm really afraid of that, and I'm pretty fearless for the most part. But I am not okay 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. One day I'm about to die, and I look back and I say, you know what? I have made so and so much money, and that's it. I'm
Do
not
you
okay with that.
do you think this is part of your purpose?
This is not part of my purpose. This is my purpose. I've been looking for this for a very long time. I
Okay.
mean, that's part of the reason why I joined the military. A lot of people don't know why I joined the military. And my own mother did not know why I joined the military until last week. And the problem was that in high school years, so I came over to the United States. I was born in Taiwan. I came over to the United States when I was 13,
Right.
and that was my ninth grade. And 11th grade, I was struggling with my self-concept. I was asking myself, what is the purpose of life? Is it
Mm.
just so that I can study hard in school, get a good grades, and then study for SAT, get a good grades, and then go to college, get a good job, get married, have kids, buy a house, and die one day? And I said, if that was the only reason why I'm going through everything I'm going through, I could easily walk out of the schoolyard and get hit by the bus, and none of that shit would matter, right? And I was really, really
Mhm.
struggling at that time. And so that was the reason why I joined the military, because I said if I was to die one day, I need to have a good reason to die. And serving the country, even though it wasn't even mine at that time, I wasn't even a citizen at that time, but dying to serve other people and protect other people, that was a good enough reason for me to die. And that's how I joined the military. And it was so confusing for my parents. And I talked to her last week because she took me, my parents took me out of Taiwan at age of 13. So I did not have to serve in Taiwan because in Taiwan it's mandatory, it's not voluntarily.
Yeah.
And now here we are 2 years coming into the state. Here comes this boy who wants to serve voluntarily. It absolutely makes no sense to my parents at all. It makes
Right.
no sense to them at all. And and we never had that conversation until a week ago. And it really pains me knowing that I was not doing a good job. And quite honestly, I was not mature enough. I wasn't patient enough to even have that conversation with my mom. It's taking so freaking long. I have to explain to her in my broken Mandarin, and she doesn't freaking get it. And she would say things that make sense to her, which doesn't fit me at all. She would say, "Why can't you just be normal like everybody else? Get a job." I say, "Mom, I can't do that. Not because I'm rebellious, because that is just dumb and immature. I don't do that shit. But the truth is, I don't fit in the box. Like, I don't, I don't know how to be normal. This is me normal. This is me being normal, right? And so
So this has
I'm really
created a purpose for you. Let's just let people that are signing on now. Denny's going to be doing a Ride for Life to bring awareness and education about the issue of suicide, depression, anxiety, things that aren't easy to talk about, but we're going to be talking about them. We're going to be talking about them, and we're going to make it a safe place where people can talk about how they're feeling. And, you know, if they're not doing so well, we want to create a place where people can talk about that stuff instead of taking their own life into their own hands, and providing some resources and options that maybe they're not thinking of in the moment.
absolutely. And at the end of the day, this is going to take the whole community, right? And we're not going to be able to change this overnight, but we'll do the best we can. At least I'll do the best I can,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know exactly what that looked like.
Well, but
If
even
it
just
takes,
doing this Ride for Life, just bringing attention to the whole issue of suicide, that's huge. It's huge. And for somebody who is struggling to be able to watch you do what you're doing and know that you were able to get through that dark time and that you found a way out of that tunnel and that dark place, that in and of itself is an encouragement to somebody who's struggling.
and this is, you're absolutely spot on, Shelly, actually. I would love to ask people, do share with everybody about this, right? And whether if they watch it or not, it's entirely up to them. But I think the goal is to let them know that, first of all, whatever they're experiencing is real. Whatever pain they're experiencing is real. And quite honestly, we will never be able to imagine what they're going through. But also at the same time, is letting them know that they're not alone, right? They're not alone. And while we might not be able to solve their problem, but they could make some choices. They have some choices to make, and perhaps making one better decision one at a time, right? And over a course of time, we can start seeing changes. We could start seeing change of trajectories and be a little bit kinder to ourselves, be a little bit more patient with ourselves, right? If
I have
things
a
are not
question.
changed right away, go for it.
Do you think that part of the stigma that is attached to suicide is because we actually do know what it is to be depressed sometimes, and that we can sometimes think that somebody else's depression will resolve itself the way ours did, or, well, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps, so why can't you? Or, well, I got through that dark time, so it's not so bad, you'll be fine. Well, not everybody's going to be fine, and maybe that's why it's so hard to discuss it, because we actually do know what it feels like to struggle and to go through a dark time. And if we are real with ourselves, we can acknowledge that we've been there, done that. But if we haven't resolved that within ourselves, it then makes it very difficult to be supportive of somebody else who's going through a dark time.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think we all try to relate. We all trying to find similarities and relate to people and be supportive. And sometimes it's easier than others. Sometimes it's challenging. It is, right? And I think this is not so simple, right? And so what we're really talking about is creating that safe environment that we can be open and honest and be vulnerable and share how we feel, and maybe we get support from other people. Sometimes we won't get it. And the other thing that we were talking about is, I know it's easier said than done. perhaps we need to love ourselves a little bit more. Perhaps we need to accept ourselves a little bit more. Perhaps we need to give ourselves a break. Perhaps we need to be kinder to ourselves. And perhaps all of that, right? And
Well,
be
here's
okay with
another thought.
ourselves.
Another thought that I just had is that the more we talk about depression, anxiety, suicide, all of the things that contribute to somebody taking their lives, the more we talk about it, the more families then can maybe identify it before it gets to a crisis point and provide a safe environment for people to talk about how they're feeling. That sometimes that person themselves, I can even tell by the way you talk about it, you take such responsibility for your own mental health that sometimes we need people around us to mirror our behavior or to call us out on behavior that might be indicative of some other serious issues that we can't identify within ourselves. We need a community around us to help us see that what we're doing is maybe we're going down a road that we really don't want to be going down.
And I agree with you. And I think a lot of time, and this is me, just me talking, and by no means, I'm not certifying anything. I'm really not, right? And I'm only sharing my own personal experience
Right.
on what went through my system. And you're absolutely correct. Everybody is different, and everybody has different needs. And I think the biggest thing that I could say is perhaps sometimes we just need to give ourselves a break. Give ourselves a break, right? If we need to go away for a reset, do it, right? Why being so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And if it works, great. But the truth is, whatever hasn't really served us, maybe we ought to give it up. Meaning, if I've always been very easy peasy on myself and shit hasn't really worked, maybe I ought to put a little bit of pressure on myself, right? But for me is I've been putting out so much pressure and stress on myself, it hasn't served. And so I ought to change that. And so perhaps it's easier said than done, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Right? Sometimes we perhaps can be open-minded and just give ourselves a chance
Mm-hmm.
and try to explore the possibility. Just give it a chance.
And I think that's your message. I think that's your message in the Ride for Life that, you know, and we should probably wrap this up because people are, it's getting late, but
Sure.
that the whole message is that it doesn't have to end that way. You know, I remember watching on Facebook, there's a tattoo and it's a semicolon and I didn't know what it meant. And what it means is that's not the end. It's like a semicolon in a sentence means there's more to come. And so people have been getting this tattoo on them of the semicolon to identify themselves as someone who's aware that suicide doesn't need to be the end. It doesn't need to be the end, that there are options, that there are resources, and that for most people, things will improve if we give it time and we do what it takes to help ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think to wrap up our conversation, the truth is, again, I don't want to be all gloomy talking about depression and suicide all day. I really don't. But the truth is, I think I look back 2 months ago, I wouldn't see myself
Doing what you're
finding this
doing now.
right. I was falling apart. My life was crumbling. My personal life, I was going to marry this woman, and we don't even talk anymore. And my business was falling apart. I would never imagine in a million years that I would find something that I would never give up. I would not. I would not do anything else. In fact, I'm willing to sacrifice and liquidate everything, and I am all in. Right? This is,
This is a
and
mission
I don't
for
want.
you.
This is a mission. This is a mission, right? And the truth is, I look fast forward 2 months later, my entire life has changed, and this is just the
Woo!
beginning. Again, I don't know what's the outcome of it, and quite honestly, it doesn't. This is something that I wrote the other day. When we are all in, the end result stop matters. It's no longer the most important thing.
Right.
Whatever this turned out to be, it stop matters to me, because at the end of the day, I know I'm doing the best I can, and at the end of the day, I'm only responsible for me,
That's right.
right? And so, Danny, I think you did well, right? And so at the end of the day, the message really is, perhaps we all could give ourselves a chance.
That's right.
Perhaps we all could experience a different side of us. Perhaps one day we can all look back and say, you know what? We did good.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, did we hit what we wanted to hit? If we did, great. If we didn't, so what? It's
You know what?
okay.
That's the beauty too of maturity, of living to be your age, because some of these kids are teenagers and they're committing suicide. They have no frame of reference that you can go through a tough time and emerge better for it. They haven't lived long enough to allow life to teach them that. Your message as you go from San Francisco to Boston is a message of hope and inspiration, that you are an example to others of what is possible.
Absolutely, right? And we will never know until we give it a try. We will never know until we give ourselves a chance. We will never know until we give our life a chance,
Right.
right? And then the rest is just finding out what that looked like. And quite honestly, everybody has that possibility, no matter if it's tender age or 30, 40, 50, 60. It doesn't really matter, right? Because at the end of the day, could have, we all are full of life if we so choose to. It really has no relevance to age at all.
You know, there was a time
And
in my life that I went through a very difficult time. I've been through a lot of them, but this one, what I learned from it was, if we're going to live, and we do have a choice, we always have a choice, but if we're going to live, why not live an extraordinary life?
hell yeah,
Why not live
why
an
not make it
extraordinary?
epic? Make it freaking epic. We have a choice, right? And do we not deserve the best?
We do.
Right? Do we not deserve an amazing
We
life?
have a right to live the life that we came here to live.
Absolutely,
Whatever
but
that
we have
is.
to make that
It's different
choice.
for everybody.
We
It's different for everybody.
we have to make that choice,
That's right.
right? Unfortunately,
I'm
epic
glad
life
you
is not
did.
going.
I'm glad you did.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, and I'm glad that I did. Right? I'm glad that Danny made some good choices. And
We
isn't
wouldn't have
that what
had the conversations that we've had the last couple of days, and they've been pretty
absolutely in quantity?
amazing.
It absolutely, and I started learning stop labeling experiences good or bad. While it all looks shitty during April and May, things falling apart, but quite honestly, looking back, I'm really grateful. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot of that stuff are absolutely unnecessary, but all that doubt was unnecessary. But those experiences are necessary for me to go through,
And be
for
where
me to pull a trigger like this.
that's
Because if business did not fall apart, because if my personal relationship did not fall apart, guess what? I would never in a million years get on the bicycle to pedal my ass off. There's no
the
reason.
message is to not give up. The message is to
Yeah,
shift your
keep
sails.
going.
Shift your
Keep
sails.
going.
It's all about mindset. What does Tony talk about? Mindset, physiology, what we do with our bodies, how it impacts us emotionally and mentally, and contribution. Come from a place of contribution. And when you're feeling that low, you don't really feel like you have much to contribute. I'll tell you that. I mean, we've all learned that. But you didn't. You kept going, and what you're doing now is going to help. I don't know. If you save one life, it's worth it. If
You
you help
know, it
one
already saved
person,
mine. It
there you
already
go.
saved mine.
Start with number one. Yeah.
And so it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right? And the beauty is, this is really not my work. This is everybody's work, because everybody is impacted by this. Right?
Well,
And
I don't know
so,
what your spiritual beliefs are, but I believe that God will work through you. That God will reveal himself in a way to somebody that needs to hear your message, to make them think twice, maybe,
absolutely.
and make a different decision, which will save a lot of people a lot of agony and pain and grief.
And I am a firm believer. I think everybody can help. Everybody can help. Really, this is not rocket science. And I'm not like super smart or kind of thing. I'm not at all, right? And everybody could help. This is really truly a community, and it started off with just being open minded and not giving up and keep going,
Yeah.
right? We all can support each other. It's not. This is really not that hard. This is easier than calculus. A lot easier, right? And
It
I
is
mean,
for me.
conceptually, right? Conceptually, it's so simple. This is so simple,
Yeah.
right? But it's not easy to execute. I understand, but I think we
But with
all
support, when we don't feel alone, when we feel supported
absolutely,
and encouraged and championed to do what's best for us, obviously, we have a better chance of making it and turning things around.
absolutely, and we all can be that champion
That's
in
right.
our own life. We all can be that champion for other people's life, right? And we all have the opportunity. We all have the opportunity. It's not like, oh, here's an opportunity, Danny, go do it. We all have that opportunity, and
Right.
we can all create that opportunity to follow our dreams and make an epic life,
Right.
right?
And that's
And
what you're
that's the beauty
doing.
of life. That's
That's
so
what you're doing.
exciting.
Yeah.
That is what wakes me up in the
Well,
morning.
I'm going
And
to look
quantity,
forward to your reports from the road, from your videos or your lives or whatever it is that you choose to use as a medium to keep us posted on this ride for life. And for people who are just joining, from August 21st, Denny's leaving San
25th,
Francisco, 25th, sorry,
Saturday.
he's bicycling from San Francisco to Boston, which is my hometown. And hopefully people will look for you, be supportive of you, feed you, give you water, give you shelter. You're going to be putting a map up on your site showing what the itinerary is going to look like, so that maybe people in those areas will reach out to you. Hopefully, the Tony Robbins community will make themselves available and be supportive of what you're doing, and be helpful in very practical ways. I trust that they will. If I have friends that are along the way, I encourage you to support Danny and to help Danny just get through this safely, and make it a successful ride for suicide awareness.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate everybody's time. And what a blessing, Shelly. Thank you for all your support and
Yes, you are.
encouragement. And thank you. I'm really grateful. And again, this is everybody's mission.
Yeah.
This is everybody's mission. And we all could be a part of it. And I'm really grateful for everybody to
Very
be a
few
part of it.
things in life that really are life and death decisions. This is one of them.
This is one of them.
Yeah.
And I really hate to see it at the expense of life.
Yeah.
I think we can do better. I
People
know
need
we
to
can do
know
better.
that they have potential. That potential can be realized if they just hang in there long enough, surround themselves with people who are of the right mindset. And if the people in your immediate family or your immediate community are not being supportive, then what's Jim Rohn say? You're not a tree. Move. Go to a community that is going to be supportive. Keep reaching out until you find someone that is willing to be supportive and helpful on your journey. They're out there.
Absolutely.
Go to a UPW with Tony Robbins. That'll fix that.
There we go.
Yeah.
And we are smart. We all are smart. We're all capable.
We can be
And we
resourceful.
know what absolutely we all can. Even though when we don't think we can, yes we can. We ought to give ourselves a chance. Right?
Amen.
We don't have to look so little of ourselves. We don't have to. Give ourselves a chance. We might be surprised. I was surprised to find out that I can pedal my ass 1,300 miles from Denver to Chicago.
But when you
Never in a
got there,
million
did you
years.
shake that ass? I'm sure Joseph would like to know that.
That's a good question. I did shake a lot of ass when I
There
was in
you go.
Chicago.
There you go.
I was partying
Awesome.
very hard with awesome people. And
Wonderful.
that's what life could be, right? I don't want to make it sound like all glorious and all wonderful and pretty and all that, but that is the truth if we
Life
choose
is
it to be.
messy. Life is messy. And again, when we have people that want to put this facade out of being perfect and everything's, that there's no struggles, it gives people the impression that there's something wrong with them inherently because they're struggling. But we all struggle. That's part of life.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So
Denny,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you to everybody
everybody's
watching.
time.
Please feel free to share this video and let people know about Denny's Ride for Life. And it starts August 25th, and he's heading from San Francisco to Boston.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.